easy for us to like say, oh, I'm gonna go check YouTube videos, I'm gonna go check Instagram videos. You keep filling yourself with information until you get to that point where you're looking inward to get these answers. Then the information you're getting might not be as effective as when you connect it to the patterns.
Welcome to Mom Mentality, your virtual village of support. I'm Jessica Campbell, your family wellness coach, and I am committed to helping you prioritize your and your family's well-being. This podcast will be like your favorite ladies group chat come to life. We'll share the ups and downs of life for moms just like you, get real advice from coaches and experts, and I'll pop in with my own stories and tips on everyday challenges to the big questions. Whether you're juggling work from home, balancing adult life with parenthood, tackling ADHD, yours or your kids, or just trying to catch a breath, Mom Mentality is your spot. Thank you for coming on the podcast today. I'm so excited to have a conversation with you. I think it's going to be great. We're going to just start off a little bit by asking you just to tell us about yourself, a little maybe elevator speech, or just give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jessica. I know I was a little nervous, but I think I'm getting into the flow now. So my name is Abby. I am a mother to two adorable daughters, and I also call myself a professional mom because I do pretty well in, parenting people professionally. Not just kids. I know sometimes as adults sometimes we do need parenting as well. So yeah, I call myself a professional parent. I work with the federal government, and I'm also a parent coach at the side, which is very interesting. Yeah, because it has really opened me up to parenting, motherhood, and myself as a whole. So yeah, and that's basically it.
That's awesome. What do you do for the government? Or can you say, are you a CIA member where it's got to be like hush hush?
No, I work with I serve Canadian citizens.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I work with the passport office. So
awesome.
yeah,
That's cool. I don't think I've ever met anybody that works in a position like that. So that's really cool.
it's interesting. And this is like the time of the year when it gets really, really interesting.
Right.
Everyone anxious, they want to get their passport, they want to go for vacation and all of that.
I know I actually might need to get myself a passport. We're talking about a cruise, and I'm like, I don't even know what this entails. I've never done any of this. There's a lot that goes into that. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what inspired, I guess, your journey of motherhood and getting into being a coach and all of those things. What are some of the challenges or even inspirations that have come up for you to get into this line of work?
The major challenge was breaking the generational cycle. I find that, I really struggle with expressing love through connection and also through play. And I feel like if you want to have the major tools in your parenting toolkit, I feel like you should have play as one of it. That's the hack for me. You need to be able to play with your kids and not just play passively. I mean, intensively, just play with your kids. That's why I get them to really listen to me. If I'm having like a behavioral challenges with them, that's when I get to talk about it. And that's when it really sinks in. Because when we play and I just hold them for a second, like, hey, I noticed you did this yesterday, how do you think we're going to do it next time so we don't get mad, we don't get in our red zone? And
Right.
that's where I really get their attention. But it was something I really, really struggled with. And I find that this has been like a generational circle. My grandmother, I remember my mom telling me that she made a promise to herself to do better in parenting, and she wanted to do better than her mom. And
Right.
her doing better, showing love, was giving her daughter things that she was denied as a child. So for her, then it was the primary education. So she
Right.
did that. She gave my mom the primary education, but there was no connection, emotional connection. There was no warmth.
Right.
So then my mom did the same thing. She was going to ensure that her daughter didn't lack things that she was denied as a child. Again, there was zero connection, there was zero warmth. So the cycle went on like that. And when I started my family, I made the same promise. because for my mom, it was the higher education. And for me, I made the same promise. And in my case, it wasn't anything educational, but I wanted to ensure that I don't use punitive measures, punishment on my kids. So I didn't want to hit my kids. I didn't want to spank them. I didn't want to discipline them through hitting them. So that was the promise that I made to myself. So it was like something I really wanted to break. The generational circle that I really wanted to break. I wanted to tap into the modern parenting and how, you know, I really wanted that connection to be there because that's something I really, really struggled with.
I think that's a great point that you bring up too, because that's an ongoing thing that I don't think we talk about very much is the fact that every parent wants to do better for their kids than their parent did. And even if they go down a bad path, I think of I live in a town where there's a lot of drug issues in a smaller rural town. And, even those people going through those hard challenges and those addictions and things like that, they always want better for their kids than they got. And sometimes you get lost along the way. And, maybe you yell, maybe you fall into addiction, maybe the challenges are endless, but we all want, when we're all ready to have a child, our initial thought is to give our children more than what we had. And it's so
Yeah.
interesting to like bring that up because I know for me growing up, it was like the very materialistic, you have a roof over your head, you have food on the table, parents work hard so that you can have all the things. But like I said, where is that connection that also feeds into that? And I think in the world, just as human beings, we've lost so much of that connection when really that's like, I think the primary reason we're here is for connection. And so it's interesting that for so long it has not been looked at. We just think that we're connected because we're talking to people and we're here, but there's so much more that goes into that.
I totally agree with you. There's so much more because sometimes, whether we like it or not, a lot of us operate in this what's the word? Obligational parent-child relationship. Like, yeah, I'm visiting because she's my mom, because he's my dad. I'm not visiting because I really need to feel, you know, connected to this person, I'm a Nigerian and I arrived Canada like 5 years ago, and I noticed that the distance, the more I was away from my parents, it didn't feel like there was an emotional distance, if you get what I'm saying. I do call them we're in great relationship, but that piece has been missing. Yeah, understanding that there's more to just parenting a child. You need that emotional connection. You need them to emotionally feel safe around you. You need them to pick up the phone and just talk to you and just get everything out. And then you feel really connected to this person is very important. And also, I know that can be underestimated, but a lot of behavioral issue is due to that emotional disconnection we have with our children, which I was able to like figure out and make a conscious decision to break the circle and give this to my kids. So my mom's story started in a small city in Nigeria where she was taken away from her parents at the age of 4 by her aunt. Her aunt promising to give her the basic education. And because that was a promise my grandmother made to ensure that her daughter gets that basic education, it was easy to let her go. She was happy to let her go at 4 years old. And it was still legal to have up to 4 wives in those days. And at that time, their major focus was on survival. Education was reserved for the male figure in that family. And then my mom's only hope of getting that primary education was this promise from her aunt. So they moved to the city, another city with the aunt. And instead of getting the care, the love, the education she was promised, instead of being taken care of as a 4-year-old child, she was the one taking care of her aunt's kids. She was made to do all the chores. She was made to go hawk and get money, and she was doing all of these at 4. She had no love. She was made to hawk eggs, boiled eggs. Like She goes to a bus station that's like very far away from the home. She would walk down there at 4 a.m. to go hawk eggs. And if she didn't sell everything, she was going to be physically like punished. She was verbally abused, she'll be denied food until she gets all the eggs sold. So this was an issue, and they went on with this. So fast forward to when she started her family, again, she made a promise that she was gonna give her child everything that she was denied as a child. And for her, it was higher education and also parental love, because she didn't get to stay with her mom. She didn't get to experience this motherly love.
That attachment, like she didn't have any attachment to her parents. So for her, attachment was a big deal.
That's correct. Yeah. Attachment was a big deal for her. Again, though, she had no safe childhood. She had no nurturing love. So all of these were missing, and she wanted to give that. And in her, and to her, that was the definition of love. And she did it. She ensured that I and my siblings, my parents, I mean, I'm talking about my mom because her story really inspired my change, right? So, yeah, but my parent literally like saved up to ensure that we're five siblings and we all attained like the higher education. So, which was very important to them. But again, like I said, that connection was missing, that warmth was missing, that emotional safe zone was also missing.
I was going to ask, with thinking that the attachment was a big deal for her, but also what does that attachment look like? Because some people think the attachment is being with your kids and being there all the time, but there's also the connection piece that goes with the attachment. And so it's interesting to see especially generationally, I think, see how people interpret those things and what that looks like for them, especially because, like you said, you struggled with the connection piece for a while and learning to play specifically through play. And so it's like she had the attachment in the sense of proximity and being with you, but lacking that more warm underlying connection. And seeing how it, like, piece by piece through each generation kind of creates more of that whole structure is very interesting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right with that. Because again, to her, the only way I can show love to my child is to fix their behavior. So if I did something unpleasant, she would withdraw love from me. She would withdraw food from me because she feel like that's the only way to discipline me. And again, that's the only way she knew how to discipline a child. She had no parental causes whatsoever. She didn't experience anything like warmth, discipline, warmth, she didn't have all of that. So yeah, it was a big thing for her. And growing up, as I grew older, I realized, I saw the intention.
I like to say you can see what's on someone's heart. I've learned that as we get older and our brains develop and we can have those hard conversations with our parents. Now I can see what was on my dad's heart, even though he definitely struggled. Now as I get older, I can see it's not a malicious intent. They did what they
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I could see, her determination to actually give me a better life, but she didn't know how to. So that was a struggle for her. Yeah, so fast forward to when I started my own family, and just like my grandmom and my mom, I also made a promise like, no, I won't punish my child I won't physically abuse my child to get them to do what I want. I would not, power over them. I would power with them. I'm going to make it like, I'm going to teach them because I am their leader. So that's what I promised I was going to do differently from my parents. But again, I realized that I was wrestling with an intense irritability, anger, sometimes resentment. The smallest of things could like set me off. And I couldn't really understand why. I couldn't understand why a 2-year-old would get me that triggered. And then I began to realize that no, this is not this child. This is a me thing. My tolerance level is so short and I need to work on it. Yes, I promise to do better, but am I really doing better? You know, I would yell at a 2-year-old and then feel bad after doing it. I was like, hey, you're doing the same thing that you promised not to do.
They're like little mirrors. It's like they hold up this tiny little mirror and you just can see
Hmm.
all of those spots where you're like, I definitely need to do better. And actually, going
Yeah.
back a little bit on your relationship with your mom and growing up, I did want to ask how that affected your sense of self-worth. And you saying now that you felt guilty going through that. What was that pattern seeing as you've grown up and having that love withdrawn and then going into parenthood? What did that look like?
It was really hard. That really affected my self-esteem for sure. But deciding to actually do better and be conscious about it. Like not just say it, not just promise it, but just being conscious about it. It was really it was the breakthrough for me.
You said you were having trouble figuring out why it was a trigger and then you feel guilty afterwards. Did you see some of that connecting back to your childhood? Or was that just something that it was like a, in this moment, I'm feeling guilty because I just don't want to do that?
Absolutely. The awareness like became a turning point for me. I began when I started like consciously cultivating new pattern and understanding this generational circle. I was able to like connect the dots, like I am leaving my parents' trauma. So it was like a healing pathway for me, like understanding the fact that this what you experience as a child, if you don't change it, you're going to project it on your children and it's going to keep going on. So yeah, understanding this pattern actually was a turning point for me, doing better and being really conscious about how I connect with my child, how I discipline them with warmth and connection.
And did you notice more of that once you started getting into the parent coaching, or how did that move you into that space to want to go deeper with it?
Yeah, it started for sure with awareness, and then I started seeking information. I would go online and buy courses because I wanted answers to those hundred thousands of questions I was asking in my head. I wanted answers. So I started taking online courses. And sometimes when I take courses, I'm like, oh my God, this is it. Like, no, this is it. This is me. It was so relatable. And I got more interested. And then I started learning about myself, like things that triggers me. Even with my husband, I was learning for my kids, but I could see this pattern in my relationship with my husband as well. I was like, okay, I am growing as a person. Aside the fact that I'm seeking answers for my children, for our relationship, this is building me as a person. So yeah,
It's so beautiful how much we grow, like you said, as a person when we have one little thing we want to work on, but
yeah.
it's so beautiful how it unfolds when you actually start to process those traumas and really do that work. It is beautiful how it changes things.
Yes, it is. It is beautiful. I totally agree with you. And I remembered one of the technique I learned, like um, if you really wanna control yourself or control those triggers, first pause and breathe. That was the first technique. I was like, pause and breathe. Okay, I'm gonna try this. I remembered I wrote it down. I just pasted it all over my house. I was like, pause and breathe. And when my child does something, I would just like, okay, it's okay. Just pause. Just take that deep breath. And I remember I always do it like my daughter could see me doing it. Like she could see me taking that deep breath and I slow down and then I use a lower tone to like talk to her. Instead of just screaming, across the room, I would go close and just connect with her and then ask her those questions instead of just screaming.
Right.
And that really helped because my daughter, she was able to like express herself. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I am so, so happy that I actually came close and then lowered down my tone. Because I could remember prior to that, I would scream and then she would scream, and the whole house is like in chaos. But as soon as I was able to access this technique, it was really mind opening for me. And yeah, that was the first thing until today. My daughter's 5 now, and yeah, it's been great experience.
Are there any specific times, I guess on either end, whether it be a positive or a negative, that you specifically remember that stand out for you? I know there's a time when I decided with my daughter, I tried to put her in timeout, and it was this horrific thing, and her little face is burned into my memory because I terrified her like that because she's an attachment kid. She does not want to leave my side. And it was in that moment that I was like, I will not do timeouts ever again. I'm never going to banish my kid. So do you have any time like that where it's either a negative time that stands out to you that you're like, this is what I don't want, or a time where you were able to, get your calm that stands out to you like, this is why I do it all?
Okay, so for me, I would say it was my issue is yelling at her. I didn't spank her, but I would yell at her, and then I would realize that, hey, this is age appropriate behavior. Why are you getting triggered? So if this child is doing things that are age appropriate and you are getting triggered, then it's your problem. Then you need to deal with your problem. So, and because I was in that journey of self-growth as well, I was beginning to understand myself, because this whole experience and this whole generational cycle kind of like detached me from myself as well. So I was learning myself, and I realized that, hey, if you get triggered, then it's your problem. It's how you react to that thing that's triggering you. And that was one thing that was really open to me, and I really wanted to work on. So whenever I get triggered, I first check in with myself. Why is this a trigger to me? And understanding that and looking at, going back and seeing the pattern made me realize that, okay, your mom really struggled with this. So if you want to grow, if you want to work on yourself, you need to unlearn all of these things. And for me, that was the point where I needed to look inwardly and actually work on my self growth.
Right, right. I resonate so much with that. I'm definitely a yeller. I always say I'm aggressive in all of my feelings. I'm an aggressive love person. I'm an aggressive sadness. Like I'm loud, I'm
Yeah,
eccentric, and
yeah.
and so yelling was definitely one of those things for me. And like you said, with the pause and breathe, breathing was always kind of a trigger thing to me because my mom used to use that as kind of like a manipulative behavior. Like, you just need to
Mhm.
breathe, but she'd be projecting her own anxiety and workup on me and telling me I needed to
Yeah.
breathe when I was like, I'm calm. What are you talking about? And so for me, anytime people would say to breathe, it would just bring up this extra sense of rage. Like, stop telling me
Yeah.
to breathe. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Once I was able to just forget about the breathing, just take a moment. Just if you have to hold your breath, do that before you
Yeah.
yell. And that kind of empowered pause was really game
Yeah.
changing for me because sometimes it's
Yeah.
just being able to sit quiet, even when my kids, like, they still have their things are still playing out with my husband and their relationship.
Mhm.
And for a long time, I wanted to correct everything that they did, because I was like, no,
Yeah.
this is how you have to do it. And so even now, when things get heated between them, allowing myself to just sit quiet and not jump
Mhm.
in and want to
Yeah.
reprimand him for not doing it the way I think is correct, just
Yeah.
having that pause has really helped all of our dynamics. So I think that is
Yeah.
definitely a powerful
Yeah.
tool that seriously underestimate.
It is underestimated for sure. And breaking the cycle meant more than avoiding physical punishment to me. And it also meant like intentionally healing and freeing myself from this generational cycle that wasn't serving our connection. So yeah, that was really a big thing for me. And it's a healing or learning or parenting. I always say it's not a destination, it's a process. And the more we unravel, the more we know about ourselves, and the more we understand our kids and how to actually respond to them rather than react.
Right. 100%. How do you find compassion for yourself in those moments? Because I know that's something I struggled with in the beginning a lot, was when I would have those slip ups, especially if we're going to be honestly vulnerable here. When I was going through my parent coaching, I would get so hung up on the fact that I knew all of the things, but I wasn't able to integrate them yet. And I was still yelling, and I guilted myself pretty hard. And to be fair, I was newly postpartum. Like, it was less than a year. My child wasn't even a year yet. And so I definitely struggled with that. But how were you able to find that compassion for yourself, even knowing that it was something you were working towards, but maybe you weren't there yet?
One of my mandates used to be progress. Like, so long as I'm making progress, it just releases that dopamine in my brain. So it's not about, hey, because again, because I was constantly learning about these things about myself, about how to actually discipline my child, but remain emotionally connected to them. I was experiencing information overload. I was kept taking in information, but in the heat of the moment, I am not able to assess this information. But sometimes it could take me 3 hours to realize that, hey, you should have done better. If you had done it this way, you would have gotten a different result. So, and then after a while, it was taking like 1 minute. As soon as I'm doing it, I'm realizing like that awareness will come immediately. For me, that's a growth. That's the growth. Because if it was taking me 4 hours to realize, to reflect, and now it's taking me like 30 minutes or 5 minutes. So
Right.
I was happy with that progress. And for me, that really gives me joy and fulfillment and, compassion for myself as well. Like, hey, you're doing great. Yes, you're not there yet, but you're progressing. It used to
Right.
take you 3 hours and now it's taking you 5 minutes. So you're doing something good. So for me, that was no matter how tiny the progress is, it gives me a lot of joy and fulfillment to like want to even do more of it. Yeah.
Right. Celebrating those small wins.
Mhm.
I feel that too, because I know there's times where as I'm saying it, I'm hearing it and it's
Yeah.
already coming out, but I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I wanted to do that. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting how that pops up. And I've had these conversations with my husband. I'm like, it will come out of my mouth. And I'm like, ooh, my whole house, like we have potty mouths. So that's just how we are. And my kid, I even allow my kids, as long as they're not being mean, if they are
Mhm.
playing a game or they stub their toe or
Mhm.
whatever, I don't get
Mhm.
hung up on the
Yeah.
language. But there have
Yeah.
been times where I'll drop an F bomb. And then my husband's like, did you really just do that? Because I'm usually the one who's a little more chill and a little more laid back towards them. And so sometimes
Yeah.
it's like I'm just complaining and then it comes out and it's seemingly directed at them. And then I'm like, no, nope, I heard it. I heard it. And then I have to be like, okay, sorry. That's not towards you. But it is something that now, yeah, like you said, now I'm to that point. But in the beginning,
Yeah.
it was definitely a struggle. And I definitely struggled with having compassion for myself.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of my trauma is
Yeah.
I have a very hard time not beating myself up over anything that I mess up. And so I definitely think we hear so often celebrate your little wins. And I almost feel like it's so said that people just disregard it and don't think of how
Yeah.
truly impactful it can be when you're really just thinking of those tiny little things that are moving you forward.
Absolutely. That could be just give yourself a tap on the shoulder. I do that as well. It's like, girl, you did it. You did it.
Right.
Just go.
Right. And it's interesting because I had seen somebody share something about instead of making a vision board that's all the things you want, make a vision board of what you want your day to day life to look like. So maybe it's a water bottle because you're drinking a
Yeah.
little more water, but your bigger
Yeah.
goal is obviously health. And it's the same
Mhm.
concept with our parenting and celebrating those little things. Like for me, I get so happy when I just play with my daughter's hair. I have 3 daughters, and sometimes I'll just go up and just start playing with their hair, and no one did that to me ever. So for me, like that's one of those little physical connections that reminds them that I
Mhm.
love them, that they get,
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
something, and I never thought about it until I started doing it. It was a very natural thing. I
Yeah.
just go up and like stroke their hair or something. And I was like, no one did that to me. So that's kind of cool that they have a mom that will just come up and play with their
Mhm.
hair, give them a little
Yeah.
back rub, or, and when you're not in that state of self awareness, you don't think of those things. So it's really
Mhm.
hard
Yeah.
to have that compassion when you're not looking back at like, wow, this is something I do for my kids that I didn't get as a child.
Yeah. And talking about that connection moment is very important for me because that's something I didn't get as a child. And for me is actually our bedtime reading, our reading time, that's when we actually bond. And I remembered I started even reading to my first daughter, when she was still in my belly. Like I would just read those because I wanted to learn how to enjoy reading kids' book because, I didn't have one a lot growing up. I only had textbooks.
Right.
So I wanted to enjoy reading it. I needed to learn how to do it because I told myself like that was going to be my own connection time with them. Like no matter how stressed out I am, I'm going to make out that 10 minutes, 15 minutes to read to them before they sleep. And now my kids are so used to it. And when I don't read to them, they cry.
There's so much power in that bedtime routine that it's actually funny because our kids are almost, actually really good for us in the sense I like to read, but it has to be something that really catches me. Otherwise, I won't do it. And we had an advent calendar one year, and I think my oldest was like 3 at the time. And so we started with the advent calendar and then we just kept going. We were like,
Yeah.
well, let's keep reading. And now if we don't, it's like a big deal. They keep me consistent because my oldest is very habitual and I'm not
I
because I have
know.
like HD. I'm like wing it. We'll just do whatever. And it could be 11:30 at night. We could get home from some kind of
Yeah.
event and they're like, no, we at least need a short book. And I'm like, girl, okay, we got it.
Remember, I used to tell myself, because sometimes, like you said, we'll get back from a party at 11 and they want us to read. And I remember telling myself, I was like, look, it's not about the book. It's not about the reading. It's about the connection, like the bond that we share. How I read to them that make them laugh before they sleep. That's very important to them. So now, once, even if we get home late, we still try to do, we can get like one book and very few pages and just read through and just, connect with them, kiss them, that's very important to me as much as it is to them as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we have little baby board books still because so my
Yeah.
youngest is 20 months and my oldest is 8 and
Yeah.
I've got a 5-year-old. And so sometimes we're like, okay, well, we'll just read a really short, pick a little
Mhm.
book and they'll pick one of those and it's like fine. But it's actually funny because my middle, she'll like get so upset if their dad does not rub her back to sleep. She's like, it helps me sleep. I can't sleep if you don't rub my back. And so they've just gotten because our routine is like we read a book or two depending on the
Yeah.
time, and then
Yeah.
we say 3 things we're grateful for from the day, and then we
Mhm.
say a prayer and we go to sleep. And
Yeah.
if we don't do it in that order and we don't
In
make
that
sure
order.
that stuff is done, they're like, excuse me, what are you doing? We cannot. And like, then everybody's elevated if we don't have that time. And it's
Yeah.
funny because they're the kind of kids that like want to jump around and act crazy before bed. But if we don't do, it's like they know that that's their process and it like
Mhm.
calms them. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny. They have to keep on us sometimes because we're like, but it's 11. Do we have to? And they're like, yes, you do. There's so much
Yeah.
power in a bedtime routine. I think it's seriously underestimated.
I know, like the wind down is something, it's a hack that I feel like I figured when my first daughter was born, because we always had this, we had it in this order, like bottle, book, and cuddle, So I give her a bottle, then we read a book, and then we cuddle to sleep. It always goes in that order until they grow up. And that really helps. That really helps our nighttime or bedtime, routine.
Yeah. I think it helps in general, just the dynamics too, because you could have a really hard off day where everyone's just chaotic and yelling. But if you can get back to that at the end of the night and calm everybody and go to bed in a place of peace, like it's so, so beneficial. We used to have a really hard time
Yeah.
with our nighttime routines, and it would be like, this was early on before I even became a parent coach. They would get all riled up, and then my husband would get triggered, and then everyone would be chaotic.
Yeah.
And I'd be chaotic. And that's where I was like, something's got to give here. This is not okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm
Yeah.
tired, and they're tired, and that makes it worse. But once we were like, able to lock down that after dinner, bedtime wind down, it was just,
Yeah.
it's kind of a game changer when it comes to your family.
I know, and it's still a struggle, especially the bedtime is still a struggle because
Yeah.
even after going in this order, my daughter is like, that's when she want to ask me questions. That's when she want to pee. That's when she have 100 things on her to-do list to do at night. So it's still a struggle. But again, understanding that it's about the connection. It's about, your child not feeling comfortable to like detach, knowing that I'm going to be detached from my caregiver for the rest of the night. It gives them like a kind of anxiety and they want to just be around you. So they come out of their room like 100 times and I remember after like 3 times of them coming out of their room, I would freak out and yell and scream at them.
Right.
But now I'm like, just give them grace. Okay, let's say 10 more times. Right. Now they hardly even come out when they're in your room. Yeah.
My hack was so I've always been the person that needs sleep. Even my dad used to say, I asked him one time, how come you never grounded me or I never got in trouble for staying out too late? He's like, because you didn't. You came home and you wanted to go to bed. You were not the kind of kid. On a rare occasion, I would stay out. He's like, you were the kid that came home and wanted to go to bed. And so I've always been that way. So when my oldest was like born, it would be like slowly I'd bring her into bed like a little bit longer and a little bit longer because I was nursing. And I was like, I don't want to get up. I'm too tired. And now, like I said, I have a 20-month-old, a 5-year-old, and an 8-year-old, and we have a community room. They have their own bed in my room. And I think that that's the only reason that our routines go as well as they do, because I said, this is so attached that like he does not like to leave me at all. I can't even drop her off for dance and like run an errand. She doesn't like it. And so we got them into their own bed two-ish, I think about 2-ish years ago. But we just have like a big bed for my older two, and then they sleep in their bed, and then the rest of us sleep in the other bed. And it has made our nights so much more peaceful because they don't have that anxiety trying to leave me. There's definitely days where I'm like, it would be nice if you were in your own room, but they don't. And I'm like, at 16, they're not going to want to be at my butt like that. So we'll just let it go. And I know sometimes people look at that as being such a strange thing, but other cultures still do things like that. And there are people that live in tiny homes that all share a space. So for us, it works. And we make sure, we have our time. But I think that that's been probably the most helpful. And it was really just because I just did not want to give up on my sleep. I think it looks different for everybody too. And sometimes, society has so much expectation on what it should look like. It's what works for us as a little community and not what works for one person or what works for another family.
100%. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, because we're also different. And I even do that with food. I've had people, I'm not cooking separate stuff for my kids. Well, my kids have sensory issues and I'm not going to force them into something. If I didn't want to eat it, I wouldn't. I may not plan a whole separate meal, but I've always got a safe food available that they can eat instead. And I'm like, because they deserve that respect too. We've veered so far from trying to collaborate as a family rather than just what the parents want or just what the kids want. And we've seen that generationally too, I think, from, that power over was just what the parents want, that authoritarian kind of parenting. And then it went to permissive where it was like, what do the kids want? And let's just only worry about the kids. And we kind of lost that balance, but I think there needs to be like way more collaboration.
Yeah. I do have boundaries, I do give my kids options, but the options are things that I'm comfortable with. So if you don't want to have cereal for breakfast, you can have chicken nuggets or you can have peanut sandwich. So I give you those 3 options you have to choose from. Instead of saying you must eat this. No, I give them that options, and that's the collaboration we're talking about.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you're happy, I'm happy, our nervous system are balanced for the rest of the day. No one is triggered, I'm not ruining their day, before going to daycare. So everyone is good.
Right. It's like you said earlier, like you have to lead them. And yes, we have to make certain choices for them, but also give them as much ability to have that autonomy and collaborate as we can. That kind of leads me into this question of like, what does play look like for you with them? Like, how did that unfold? And what have you found is a good balance for you in your play?
Like I said, play was something I really struggle with. And I never believed that a parent should even struggle, with play. But I know that there are a high number of parents who struggle with play, who doesn't come to them naturally. But understanding that, again, like I said, whenever I do something little and I get results, that's my motivation. I did a 28 challenge. I remember I started like, okay, this is what I'm going to do 5 minutes before or 5 minutes after reading. So And I find that I was enjoying it. I was laughing. I would be stressed because I have a full-time job. I come home, I have another, moment with my kids. And then at the end of the day, they go to sleep at, let's say, 9. And I have to fill my own bucket, which is studying, right? I have to read or do something for myself. But sometimes when I'm even stressed, again, that's something I struggled with. And I play and I laugh, kind of feel better when I laugh. So I was always looking forward to it because I notice what it does to me as much as it does to them. Yeah, there are times where they don't want it to stop. But again, it's because we both enjoy it. We both getting our needs met. And
Right.
I'm able to like throw one question to my daughters, ask them questions about something that they did a day before or, that was unpleasant to me. And yeah, I didn't have time to talk about it. So we talk about it during play. And you could see their involvement talking about those things like, oh yeah, I pushed her because she was really getting on my nerves. And we're able to have this conversation while we're, like playing.
Right.
So for me, it was healing. It was like healing for me. It was like therapeutic for me because I find that even when I'm stressed and I laugh and play with them, I feel less stressed.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, so that was something very important for me, and I was glad that I was able to hack into that.
Yeah. I love that you said laughter because I've actually started just reframing. Instead of saying we need to play together, I just say we have to have fun. And I actually, so tomorrow at the time of this recording is my 10-year anniversary with my husband. We went to a comedy show, which we had never done before earlier in the month. And that was a conversation we had had. I was like, we need to laugh more, man. Like, we have not had just fun where we could just laugh. And I was like, I think we're going to be going to more comedy shows. But
Yes.
I've always thought that laughter is such a good form of connection for like having fun and like building up that relationship with whoever you're with.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we get hung up on the word play where like, I don't know
Yeah.
how to do that. But if we really just reframe it as having fun together, I know for my oldest, she's a gamer and I never thought I would have a child that's a gamer, but here we are. And so sometimes as a family, we'll play Minecraft together and we can have fun building or like tearing each other's stuff down or flooding it like just for the fun of it. And so, there's a lot of talk around screen time and things like that. And I definitely try to utilize it as a connection tool versus just to like shut my kids up or keep them away. There's so many different ways that you could play with your kids, and it doesn't have to look like just sitting down with a Barbie. Like for my husband, he's a wrestler. He wrestles them. He gets rough. Or my dad is even that way when he takes them to the park. He'll climb up on stuff and get them to get a little braver. He's always been really good at that stuff. He's an outdoorsy person. I'm not. So I'm like, hey, if you want to go fishing, go with grandpa. If you want to go, learn this, go with grandpa. He'll touch the worm. I will not, looking at it from so many different perspectives of where can you meet them where they are and take that baby step towards play rather than have to do it this way.
Right.
How can I meet them with something that interests both of us? Sometimes it's taking my kids to get a pedicure with me, and we have fun. We get little fancy drinks when we're there. They get to pick colors. We get to, and it's easier because I have girls, so we're interested in similar stuff. But like, so sometimes it's just doing makeup together or face paint, or we put hair glitter in our hair. But like, I definitely think you have to experiment, and like get curious as to where you can meet them where they are and find that like space where you guys can coexist and enjoy each other. Because if you're trying to play Barbies with a kid and you don't know what you're doing and it's not something you enjoy anyway, you're not going to have the fun. You're not going to have the laughter.
You're right. And I love how you reframed it. You said, let's have fun together. I feel like that's kind of like toned down the pressure because I have a full-time job. Trust me, when I get home, the last thing I want to do is play. I just want to feed them and let them go to sleep. Like the last thing I want to do is play. But again, even while feeding them, you can have fun. So I love how you framed it because it kind of like tone it down. It's not, you don't have to have a like structure of the kind of play to have with them, but you can just have fun. And it can just let it be natural. Just let it be organic. And yeah, you're going to have the fun.
I always said I didn't have a very close family dynamic in general, like extended family or anything. And, there's that stereotypical grandma bakes cookies with her grandkids, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, I never got a grandma that baked cookies. My grandma's Southern. She's like whooping it with, with a switch, like she was very like work hard. Like I didn't have that grandma that did that. And for a long time, I was like, well, that's not fair. And it wasn't until this year I got medicated this last year for my ADHD, which I've never been before. And it turned on this switch in my brain where I am like this Betty homemaker, want to do everything from scratch. I made all of our Christmas cookies and everything from scratch. I made our Christmas dinner from scratch. And I started a sourdough starter and all these things. And I said to my husband, thinking on that grandma thing and even during the depression, people didn't have a lot of money. And I think that food became such a big thing because you can get your kids involved and have fun. Well, it's kind of like killing two birds with one stone, right? You're having fun with them, you're enjoying presents, but you're also feeding your family. And so you don't have to spend all this extra money or take all this extra time. You can do these things together. And I think that's where that came from with grandma's baking cookies, because that was a way to have a food, have a thing that you could surround yourself around and have fun, but also it's serving a purpose. And that kind of opened up my mind a little bit. And so we've been on a journey of a lot of homemade stuff, and I've had my kids involved in every part of it. And it's so fun. Cute. And when they're this age, they enjoy that. Like when they're older, I don't know, as kids evolve, but like it can start with such a simple thing, like help me make dinner, and they enjoy that and they have fun with that because it's something new. And I also think we forget how just something new, just a new experience can be so fun for kids.
Yeah, I remember the first time my daughter like helped make pancake. Now we do it every Saturday morning. She just turned 5 last week, and when I was asked, like, what's one unique thing you love about yourself? And she told me, she said, I'm very helpful. I help you make pancakes. I was like, oh my God, I wish I could see that.
Right. Yeah, my oldest was like, I help with the baby. And I was like, you do. And I appreciate you so much because I also work full time and I'm running a business on the side and I homeschool. And, we have so many things. So sometimes the baby will get on the bed in my bedroom and it's across the hall from my office. So I'll hear her going, help me. She can get down, but she won't. Like she will not drop herself off, but she won't do it. And so I'll be like, hey, can you help her down? And so just any little things like that, my oldest will try to help with. And so the other day she's like, I help you with that. And I'm like, yes. And it is so beneficial, but you can feel that sense of worth where she's like, I'm doing something good for another person. Even with allowances, we started working on helping them provide value. So they don't get paid to do their own chores or clean up their own stuff. But if my oldest wants to offer to make dinner and take that off my plate as a value or a service, then I'll pay her for that. And so it's simple stuff like fish sticks or easy things that she can make. But she feels good knowing that she's provided a value. I think you can reframe it. It's like, it's no longer, like you said, the pressure of play. It's just the enjoyment of fun and doing life. As we're getting closer, I want to just ask you if you could leave one tip or one piece of advice or part of your story. If there's one thing that our listeners could take away from this interview, what would you like to leave them with?
I'd say the answer to the unending questions could just be awareness on your generational pattern. So a lot of times, we think, oh my God, parenting is hard. Yes, it's hard. But if you understand the pattern, it's gonna give you like structure and guideline on how to unlearn things that are not serving you or your relationship with your child. So you have to I know sometimes it could be scary to um, go through the rabbit hole, but again, understanding the patterns will give you clarity on what to work on to better your relationship with your child.
Yeah, that's a really good one. It's so true. It really comes from that self-awareness of being able to have that compassion, look back, understand, and go a little bit deeper. It's like you can't there is no one size fits all. So when you can have that awareness, look back, it's so true.
Yeah, and it's easy for us to say, oh, I'm gonna go check YouTube videos, I'm gonna go check Instagram videos. You keep filling yourself with information until you get to that point where you're looking inward to get these answers, then the information you're getting might not be as effective as when you connect it to the patterns. And that would help you also connect the dots in order to make the decision on how to move forward.
Right. Right. When you can look at all of those things that, yeah, it may work for one person, but it's not going to work for you because your behaviors and your patterns and the way you move through the world are so different. If you don't see where you're at, then all of those other tools are kind of useless because you don't know how to implement them, or you don't know if it's a tool that you can even implement. Maybe it's something like the breathing, right? That was such a hard thing for me. I was like, I'm not breathing. I worked on so many other tools before I got to the point of breathing, because I was like, this is just woo woo. I don't want to do that. Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because I think that that is just, that's so true.
Yeah. Also understanding that everybody's experience is uniquely different. I have two kids, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I could tell you that they're different humans. So I find myself being two different type of personality for my girls. And this comes from me understanding how to, how to understanding how to learn about them individually, not, using a script to parent them, but understanding that, okay, what works for my first daughter, it's not necessarily working for my second daughter. My first daughter is the attachment nerd. It's like, she's all over me. And my second daughter doesn't even care. So if I get it online from a parent whose child is totally different person, and then I want to apply that same parental style on my children, then it's not going to work. Until you get to the point where you're understanding them based on who they are, then every technique might not just work for them. And it will just give you more stress and more burnt out. So looking inward, understanding yourself and how you react to them individually can just be the breakthrough as well.
That's so true. My oldest two are like polar opposites. I had that struggle with my middle, where I'd be like, hey, how do I help her be calm if she won't let me touch her and cuddle her and make her feel better? She's not that kid. And I've learned it's the proximity. I'll say, okay, well, I'm going to sit here with you and, be here for you, and we can, work through it, whatever. But it's not to say that you can't have some like canned responses to practice or try and see where it works, to like learn to integrate. I know for me, learning to work on my like nonviolent communication, I needed a script. And sometimes it feels funny because it doesn't like it's something that you say, but there's no shame in also saying, I've never been talked to like this before. So sometimes you get tools and you test them, and it's trial and error, and it's figuring out again who they are, where you're coming from.
I agree with you. You're right. You can have the script, but know how to apply it to based on their individually.
Yeah. Well, in the interest of honoring your time, I want to thank you for having this conversation, because it was just really eye-opening. I loved hearing your stories and how that has changed and I resonate so much with just trauma in general. So I really liked hearing, how things have panned out. I just want to thank you for having this conversation. But where can people find you?
My email for sure, thegrowingparent4@gmail.com. That's the most stable means to reach me.
Remember, you are powerful, you are worthy, you are valued, and you are loved. Keep pushing, keep loving, and most importantly, keep believing in your amazing ability to empower your legacy.